Death, life, and the law. Abortion as more than a medical procedure, a human right. While the topic of abortion is an extremely relevant issue, federal legislators refuse to make any significant changes supporting the legalization of what many consider to be a human right. After the Supreme Court declared abortion to be a right protected by the Constitution through the 14th Amendment, ensuring life, liberty, and privacy to all American citizens, state governments still reserve the right to restrict abortions as they see fit, and most definitely do. Through carefully analyzing articles that discuss the topic of abortion from a legal, moral, and political standpoint, I plan to convey just how abortion is a human right through bodily autonomy and why the right to choose is so important in our country. The issue at hand is the intense restrictions placed on abortions. The problem is simple. Abortion is far too restricted in the United States, and women all across the country are suffering because of it. Most obviously, this is a violation of rights. Through our Constitution, we as American citizens are granted life and liberty, which in theory should also ensure us bodily autonomy, the right to do what we want with our bodies. The 14th Amendment states this outright in the Due Process Clause. Beyond the legality of it, bodily autonomy is also a human right that must be granted to everyone, provided it doesn't negatively affect or harm the people around you. This also is a compromised welfare of society. People everywhere are negatively affected by this restriction of abortions. On the contrary, there are few people that are positively affected by it. Women who are forced to carry out a full-term pregnancy against their will often suffer mental anguish and grow depressed. Unwanted pregnancies can lead to losing a job, dropping out of school, financial and mental struggles, with an end result of an unwanted baby. Unwanted babies often land in the foster care system, which carries a huge enough problem on its own. We also deal with restricted health care. Abortions are necessary for so many women everywhere, not only for mental health reasons, but also for physical health. Criminalizing or abolishing abortions prevents healthcare providers from thoroughly doing their job. This could be from fear of overstepping fine legal boundaries that could land them in a lot of trouble, or denying an abortion to an already medically compromised woman due to its legal status. A well-rounded health care for women includes contraceptives and abortions. This is indisputable. My research design begins with accessing various scholarly search engines such as JSTOR, ProQuest, and articles found on the National Library of Medicine. After carefully selecting articles, journals, and excerpts that are factually based and informative, I will compile evidence, statistics, and details concerning this topic, taking into account various viewpoints to avoid any biased sources. I plan to analyze this social problem of restricted access to abortion to provide a clear outlook on women's rights to bodily autonomy and the right to choose. Some background information. The first attempt at an abortion ban was actually long before the United States existed. This was Pope Sixtus V declaring abortion to be murder in 1588. The U.S. only became a country in in 1776. The case law Roe v. Wade was passed to protect a woman's right to have an abortion and support bodily autonomy and a right to privacy. Since this was passed in 1973, states across the country have been fighting to restrict this allowance for abortions so tightly to the point of essentially abolishing it. In 1992, a case questioning the requirements of abortions placing unnecessary restrictions allowed the Supreme Court to reaffirm Roe v. Wade, stating that certain restrictions on abortions are unconstitutional before the fetus is viable if they place a, quote, undue burden on the woman. This case was Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania v. Casey. Over the years and constantly changing laws, many countries have already legalized abortion or greatly decreased restrictions, with the number growing every day, while we as a country are moving in the opposite direction. Texas has recently passed a bill called the Senate Bill 8 in March of 2021, restricting abortions so tightly that it is almost impossible for a woman to obtain one, even in extreme cases. They note to make an exception for medical emergencies, but even these cases are so restricted they're not easy to get a hold of. Legislators everywhere for a long time seemingly cannot come to a conclusion on just how to regulate what women do with their own bodies. Restricting abortions further will violate the rights of women. As I mentioned before, this is a direct violation of the 14th Amendment's Due Process Clause. Beyond this, it also restricts overall health care for women in an already restricted healthcare system. It will also compromise safety through making abortions less safe. Restricting abortions will never stop abortions from happening. It will only stop them from happening safely. Abortions everywhere happen for so many different reasons, not just unwanted pregnancies, which I may add is still a totally valid reason for terminating a pregnancy. These reasons don't simply disappear when abortions are banned, making women everywhere resort to outdated and unsafe methods, often performed by non-professionals, and resulting in various illnesses, ailments, and even death. Legal abortions, on the other hand, have an even lower risk of any sort of complications than giving birth. Our last effect is extreme population growth. If women are unable to receive abortions for unwanted pregnancies, it winds up with unwanted children. This helps surge the already growing population of the world. With populations growing more and more every year, malnutrition, starvation, poverty, lack of medical and educational services, pollution, and growing conflict all become a looming threat as the earth grows weaker. These growing numbers would not only increase our population on earth, but wind up with so many children in an already overwhelmed and broken foster care system, or worse, wind up in a broken and unhealthy home. Legalizing abortion, on the other hand, will ensure bodily autonomy through respecting the freedom of choice and privacy in women across the whole country. Bodily autonomy, the right to choose, is not only a freedom granted to us in the Constitution, but is often considered a human right. It seems as though women are only seen as incubators for fetuses when these strict abortion laws take place. Legalizing abortion will also provide safe health care. Without a demand for illegal abortions, Women everywhere would benefit from safe options to terminate a pregnancy if need be. A part of complete health care for women includes contraception and abortion. Without these, women have incomplete care. Lastly, it will enhance the overall well being of society. With wider access to safe health care, less unwanted pregnancies, and the freedom to choose what one wants with their body. The solution to the issue of restricted abortions begins with the federal government. Minimizing restrictions on abortions at the federal level will then trickle down to the individual state governments, ensuring a wider access to abortions and enforcing our constitutional rights. The significance of this solution is a great one. Abortion is a right that needs to be federally protected, and soon. Every day, people are negatively affected by the restrictions of abortions, and this will not resolve until a change comes from the top. The top is coincidentally our government that is there to ensure our rights given to us through the Constitution. Included in that, abortion. These people in government are the only ones who have concrete power to make a significant change, and most of them have never and will never be in the position of a woman who needs an abortion. I fear for the women in situations that need access to abortions when it isn't there for them, and hope that lawmakers in the states come to see that abortion is a human right protected by our Constitution, essential for the well-being of society. Here are my sources cited, and here are the formalities. Thank you so much for tuning in.